Good evening, race fans, and welcome out to another Final Fantasy IV Free Enterprise Adamant Cup group race. Tonight we have the play-in match between Elvensorrow and Xyrak of the Aegis Shield group, uh, the winner of which will be going on to compete in the brackets. Tonight I have Vitasia here in the commentary booth with me. Hello, Vitasia. How are you doing tonight? And have you been looking forward to this as much as I have been?
This is the final culmination of Beauty and I's group that the two of us raced in. So absolutely looking forward to this race between Elven Sorrow and Xyrak. We already had Night Dew from our group go ahead and punch his ticket. And now we'll get to see who the second winner of our group gets to move forward. Both Elven Sorrow and Xyrak at 3-2 have run fantastic races up to this point in time. And this is going to be a very, very hype race. Looking forward to it. Uh, Beauty, what do you think of these objectives? Just to get us started here.
It's going to be interesting mix tonight. We have trade away the pink tail, destroy the super cannon, white spear altar, liberate Baron Castle, trade away the rat tail. So we have two tailed turn-ins, crystal sword, and cave Bahamut. So quite a few objectives up on the moon, and we see our race kicking off. We have a Yang start and a Pan to start as well.
Yeah, early pan to me, I'm like, I'm going to try to dodge Fabul as much as I possibly can. But you're right, three objectives that are locked behind that darkness crystal between the crystal sword altar, cave Bahamut, and the white spear altar. Two tail turn-ins, and then we had a super cannon and what was it? The last one, liberate Baron.
Correct. Yes, liberate Baron.
So not really a huge diversity of key items here. This could be a relatively early seed, and depending on how things roll out, we may not see 10 key items, which is kind of a rarity in this particular flag set. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Elven Sorrow and Xyrak now off to the races. We see kind of the logical early play. We don't have to do a demist hunt, so we're checking. Oh, okay.
Speaking of Liberate Baron Castle, we see Bedward with a Baron key. So we already have one of our key items that needed for an objective, and we're already on the overworld. So we may see our first objective relatively soon this evening.
I would absolutely make that a priority check. The key philosophy I think in free enterprise is always if you have an objective to do your objectives. With Baron Castle early, that's one of those key objectives that could possibly have been in a nasty spot, but it's available to us early. Um, would love to see the runners be able to do that earlier. We're going to have some other checks that end up happening a little bit beforehand, but do love to see when that's going to end up happening.
Absolutely, and both runners choosing to take the public treasury, and they're both going to stop off in town here and do a little shopping before they split up. They've both been right on each other's heels so far. I think the other interesting thing about a Baron key is it does give you access to the Baron shops as well. It gives you opportunity to pick up some gear if you don't have any luck finding anything good for your current party. So that'll give them a few more options for weaponry. Maybe make it so they don't have to do quite as much looting in the early game.
Well, this is an interesting party when it comes to early looting to begin with. In part because Yang doesn't require any gear, really. Uh, Depending on what claw he has, he might be fine at this point in time. We saw an early black belt. You throw that on him, and I mean, he's effectively ready to go for zero miss. He just needs levels at that point in time. You do see Xyrak taking the popular play, says, "Hey, let's go ahead and check here in the Eblin Castle." Finds one trap chest that he'll be resetting out of immediately. So Xyrak opting to do a little bit more deeper looting. I think there's a higher likelihood of some good items that are located here in Eblin Castle rather than what Elven Sorrow's doing. It's less risky to what Elven's doing, but he's going to get less powerful gear.
Agreed. And I think the other interesting facet of that too is, if I remember correctly from our group, Xyrak tended to avoid Evelyn Castle and had a few races where it didn't necessarily pan out and he missed out on some great gear. So I wonder if that played into his decision tonight. Regardless, seeing Elven Sorrow raise the hovercraft, good choice if you're already in the neighborhood. You have both tails to turn in. You're gonna need it anyways. Might as well have it up and available, and then right on over to Hobbs to see if he can secure his next party character.
Yeah, Xyrak only doing a partial loot over here, opting to go ahead and just do the right side of Evelyn Castle, not finding anything terribly worthwhile, but does go ahead and equip Yang with that black belt that he found earlier. Um, Yang comes pre-equipped with, honestly, what is by and large considered one of the best claws in the game, the Thunder Claw, just because of all the extra quad damage that it can end up dealing. Meanwhile, Elven Sorrow is checking to see the Hobbs character, and we have ourselves a second White Mage. Uh, what I would say the superior White Mage. I'm pretty sure most of the community agrees there, but
I think that's a fair assessment. I think if I remember correctly, she learns just about all of her spells. Rosa learns all of the spells that much more faster. That said, this is a little bit of a mean fight here, having the Calbrenna. No one in the party really has too much AoE, but thankfully it looks like Elven Sorrow has picked up a Gaia Drum, maybe got it in the starting kit, and is able to get through those dolls and save Rosa.
absolutely. That's the nice thing about having the dolls fight early on. Yes, there can be some mean early fights in some of these locations, especially some of the higher HP pools. Uh, when you get dolls, though, those HP pools are split over six different characters, and having a Gaia drum or really any J item just makes real quick work of them early on. So, great heads up play by Elven Sorrow, and now moving on to what looks to be the Antlion Cave with some decent levels right now. We should be able to sweep through here pretty quick.
Absolutely, and Xyrak doing just about the same thing, has raised his hovercraft as well. Looks to be making his way over to Hobbs, so not far behind. I think the interesting decision here is like you said, do we fade Fabul? I would be one to do so. I tend to fade it, especially with a pan in hand. It makes routing that much easier. You can save yourself quite a bit of time and maybe even single dip it. But without the most ideal party, some situations like say ordeals with three bosses there could be a little bit more of a struggle. Hopefully able to secure a great bow for Rosa, making her a little more powerful. I know I did see a power staff on the Porum, so we may have a little bit of punchiness to be able to solve that issue.
And Elven Sorrow finds what is probably the worst thing that you could possibly see. We have ourselves the Alt Gauntlet fight just sitting there waiting for us. We are coming down here expecting 1,000 HP fight, just a quick boss, punch, call it good. And instead we find the Alt Gauntlet available for us down in the Antlion Cave. Not what we want to see.
No, not at all, especially with so few J items to handle. Those are kind of your early AoE unless you have a spellcaster. That said, I'm interested that he's not using the kick command with Yang. Yang has that ability to put out, not a lot of damage, but at least a little bit of damage to everybody, and maybe hope that Porum and Rosa are able to wrap up the rest after a kick. Nonetheless, getting through it relatively well. That Yang punching hard enough.
Yeah, Yang is doing pretty well, and I believe Porum is also equipped with the Power Staff, so is able to at least hit things reasonably hard. Xyrak doing something interesting, meanwhile, on the other side. We mentioned dodging the Fabul Gauntlet. Xyrak is diving headlong into it, actually avoiding the Antlion Cave, saying, no, I'm going to go ahead and do this Fabul Gauntlet, is rewarded with a free fight with the King and Queen of Eblan invading their neighbors, and this is a free fight right here.
Indeed, a free fight, but maybe not necessarily one you'd like to find here. This is probably something you'd rather find in some of the ruder spots, maybe a hook route or a moon spot. In this sort of fight, not only does the script play out in such a way that you can get through this fight for free, if you're able to tackle the king, the queen will just kind of see her way out and dismiss herself. So you don't really have to finish the battle that much harder. But that said, Elven Sorrow through, and oh, there is that hook. So he's able to pick up that hovercraft now, probably feeling a little comfortable having launched it. And I'm curious to see if he's going to go do a character check and take a peek at Evelyn Cave.
This is one of those instances where, with this particular party, you got two white mages, and you have a Yang who, while I'm as much of a pro Yang fan as anyone in this community, he needs levels to be effective, and we don't have levels. So let's absolutely check this. The cave is a fantastic looting opportunity, not to mention an extra character. So let's dive in here, see what's going on. Xyrak only finds a crystal helm as his reward for fading Fabul, or for defending Fabul. So not rewarded with any sort of key item right now.
That's unfortunate. Interesting that he's walking it out and choosing not to reset, considering he's going to have to come back here anyways, more than likely, with the pan. I think maybe the thought was that with the pan in hand, his opponent was less likely to do it, maybe a little bit of metagaming, but nonetheless, a good piece of gear for a character if you pick him up. And over on Elven Sorrow side, we see a child with green hair and an antlion. That is a bit of a spicy boss at that position.
Antlion can be a little bit punchy there. And right now, here's the thing: between Rydia and two white mages, Young can take a punch. No one else in this party really can. So picking up uh, Rydia here, I imagine that Elven Sorrow will be saving and then looting through this cave. Xyrak, meanwhile, is going ahead and going to take this fight for Kenyatso. This is also a very punchy Kenyatso, uh, almost one-shotting Yang in the meanwhile. But this is going to be really interesting because this might be a rough fight here.
Yeah, indeed. That Yank does have a Thunderclaw, which will do some work here, but without a Black Mage to cast Lit 1 and dismiss that water, I think there may be enough HP in the spot to make it difficult to eat those waves from this Kanazo. And I don't. Oh, we do have one Lit Bolt that might do the trick.
Well, this is one of those spots that's actually quite slow. So you can, in addition to getting a couple of slows off, uh, you know, we were able to set up quite well in order to make sure that the lit scared up. The problem is that he still swings very, very hard. Um, the issue is going to really come down to how often, we don't have any other source of lit other than that lit bolt. Yang with the Thunderclaw will do extra damage only when the water is gathered. Kenyazo has an interesting property in that when the water is gathered, yeah, he's weak to thunder and absolutely launch whatever you can at him. However, he's not weak to thunder if the water is not there. He's actually weak to ice.
That is interesting. I was not aware of that change. I know of some of the other ones, but with Kanazo, I had made the assumption that he was always weak to thunder. So, fun times watching this race. Glad I'm in the booth. I'm learning quite a bit from you, Vitasia.
I mean, I can talk about it all day, but when I actually run the race, I forget everything, clearly.
Well, sure enough, it looks like Elven Sorrow looted on the way out. Unfortunately, I was so wrapped on this fight, I didn't notice what kind of loot he pulled out of there. And it looks like he is making his way over to Ordeals. We have not seen a Cecil that benefits the most from that Ordeals check. That said, it is a Tella over there in Baron Inn, but Elvin does not know that yet. Still making the decision to go to Ordeals first and try and get through there and maybe pick up some decent gear. You can sometimes get some rather surprising gear from the chest on Ordeals.
Yeah, I think this is mostly a play. I mean, anytime you have the seed pointing you towards a hook route. I think the general consensus within the community is, check everywhere else that you possibly can, just because if it is a magma key, you can save yourself a whole lot of time by avoiding doing that check that you don't normally have to do. So absolutely, I think both of our runners are going to eventually do this, Hobbs. Um, we might see a cheeky check where we just dive into the underground no matter what. I doubt Xyrak will dodge Mount Ordeals if he does pick up that Tella. But this will be interesting to see if anything actually does pop up here. Tella was received, and Xyrak is rewarded with, oh, hello.
Oh, we have an objective there. That said, Xyrak does not have that hook quite yet, but surely is not too far away from finding it. And that's another key item check on the overworld before you have to dive that hook route. Another opportunity potentially to find that magma key and not have to take that hook route.
So now I envision Xyrak almost immediately turning in that rat tail, because it's a bit of a freebie. Looks like he's going to do Antlion. Remember, Xyrak has avoided Antlion Cave up to this point in time, wanting to kind of route Antlion and picking up the hook together, which makes sense. But I can also imagine Xyrak, because he has more levels on his character than I think elvensorrow does, at least for the time period being. Elven might be passing him in the levels department here shortly, just being on Ordeals, but at some point you have to ask yourself, hey, maybe I go ahead and dive into Baron Castle, because we got that.
Absolutely, just another overworld check. That's it. Over on elvensorrow, we did see Rubicon apparently decided to take those full legs on display with some hiking boots and hike up Ordeals. And in the back attack spot, we have Leviathan. Once again, kind of a sneaky, difficult spot in the overworld. You start with, I believe it's 0 ATB because it's a back attack, so you're going to be a little slow to get going, and those Ice 2s are coming in kind of hot and heavy and doing enough damage to put Rosa down after one shot.
Yeah, this is a very, very high magic attack spot right now. Yang, again, with the Thunderclaw, can do a little bit of work. The problem therein being that Big Wave is going to hurt quite a bit. We're going to have to work our way slowly through here. The key, I think, in this fight is going to be keep Yang alive. That Thunderclaw is going to be doing all of the heavy lifting for this fight.
Absolutely, and you're not having too much, damage output from Porum or Rosa. Really, that Yang is your main damage output. That said, those Ice 2s have been friendly with their targeting, and sure enough, Yang is putting out some really great damage. Oh, look at that. elvensorrow had secured some lit arrows, so Rosa's gonna kind of join in the fight.
Well, if she can stay up.
Not for long, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult, and yeah, those ices hurt. So elvensorrow has to take a reset out. This is where you slow things down a little bit, go into it a little bit more methodically. Veil wore off, yeah, chat. That becomes difficult.
Absolutely. I think as a runner, you get used to the concept that the Star Veil is always there, especially in faster spots. Usually you and the boss are acting faster than that Veil is going to wear out. But when things are slowed down a little bit and you're in a slower spot and your party's slower, there's going to be enough ticks through the turn order that Star Veil will wear off on you sooner than you would anticipate. And it can make for a challenging battle when you're trying to lean on that.
Meanwhile, Xyrak does get through with the hook there. So, yeah, that's why he didn't turn in the rat tail immediately. He didn't have the hook. So.
I have to imagine, though, with Rat Tail at this point being essentially a free turn and no boss checks in your way, it would have to be the first stop there. and then just a quick route down south to head toward Ordeals. So I could definitely see Xyrak making that routing decision and being not too far behind unless that rat tail has underground access. And I think that could change up and present a really interesting decision. How soon do you go underground, especially with the pan on hand? Do you finish up the overworld or do you just dive at it?
Nothing here as well. My goodness. I was really hoping to for some cheeky checks here and there. Unfortunately, lots of crystal armor for whatever reason is available. We've
Very
seen
shiny.
crystal helms and crystal gauntlets and all sorts of crystal stuff. Um, I am worried at this point about levels in order to be able to get underground and really start taking these bosses. Elvensorrow, meanwhile, working his way through. Now I think has a little bit of an experience advantage over Xyrak. We haven't seen any dedicated leveling from either one of our runners. Xyrak with the quick reset because the trap chest is just right there as soon as you enter the underground.
That being said, you do know where it is, and you do have that out of the way, so you are free to loot the rest of Evelyn Cave without much worry in hand. I think the other aspect is this party is want for damage, and with Baron Key, you're also going to have the opportunity to do another character check before you dive underground. So. And it's a gated character check. You may have your Cecil, your Fu there, which are gated characters on this flag set. That said, Elven Sorrow over on his side securing an adamant from Ordeals. So not necessarily a progression key item, but it does add to the count. We're up to 4 key items now.
Yeah, so far, I mean, the adamant is nice, not exactly what you want to see, but at this point in time, at bare minimum, you're rewarded with a key item, and that key item will eventually, translate into those 10 key items that will help you level quicker. Unless we get a Cecil, I don't anticipate the adamant being beneficial other than that. Uh, that said, I mean, we talked about how few key items are really necessary to complete all of the objectives. So at this point, every key item is really helpful.
Indeed, they are. And also, another interesting thing about that is having the D Mist as the boss in the mirror room. That is a boss that can be very not only rude and punchy in some more difficult spots like on the moon, but also really a huge time sink having to deal with the turn to mist phase. Xyrak making the decision. Two white mages is too many, and decides to ditch Porum for Rydia.
I like it. I mean, from a power perspective, I understand it at this point in time. Tella is still useful because none of our white mages know exit, and at bare minimum, he's existing as an exit mage right now.
Speaking of exit mage, utilizing that right away, not choosing to continue on into Upper Babel, probably gonna look at that Baron key, and I believe Xyrak still does have ordeals. So choosing to kind of avoid that wise decision at this point with such low experience and low levels on his party. And sure enough, looks like Xyrak is heading to Baron. So an interesting choice here, like I said, with another opportunity for a character check, a gated character check at that. You may find your power here at Baron as well as complete an objective.
This tells me that Xyrak is absolutely not planning on keeping that Tella for 1 second longer than he has to keep this Tella. Um, he is making a conscious decision to avoid Mount Ordeals, which I think is a good play given the party that he has in particular. Um, the Tella, is fantastic early game, and he has some niche uses kind of throughout the rest of the free enterprise racing. But at this point in time, with the party that he has, you cannot necessarily afford to dedicate someone like Tella to a party when he's not going to be useful much past really the 30-minute mark or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you keep him in the party longer, he does get some really useful utility spells up on ordeals, stuff like Blink, Berserk as well. But he's not going to be too useful because he's always going to be quite squishy, and it's hard to keep him alive and even be able to contribute with the blinks. So not too much use out of him other than some early exits, and maybe with him getting the elemental three spells having the ability to take advantage of some damage. But Xyrak here entering into the Mom Bomb fight, another kind of rude fight wherever you may run into it because of the extra HP pool it's granted.
Meanwhile, this is not going to be a free Mom Bomb fight here either. We have Yang doing a little bit of damage, but my goodness, Mom Bomb just can, to give away anything. This is normally a fight by the time we're in Baron Castle doing these fights that we're either over leveled to the nth degree and just kind of steamroll this particular boss, or this ends up being a like a Golbez sort of fight where it just takes some time to get through here. We don't normally see this particular fight being, where your runners are kind of pushing the boundary limits of their levels at this point. But we're seeing at least Xyrak pushing through right now, which I think is a gutsy play. And when you're in an elimination race like you are, sometimes you have to make a gutsy play to see if you're going to win.
Absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, one of the biggest mantras when you're racing is do your objectives. You have the opportunity. You maybe don't have the easiest route to the underground, so I think this ends up being twofold: an opportunity to get some levels, get an objective done, maybe even get that magma key again, a character check. I think there's a lot of arguments here, even if this is a difficult fight. And so far, he's been pulling off very well. That said, that blink on Rydia is not going to protect against Explode, unfortunately. And now you have 6 targets you're going to have to deal with.
And I figured Xyrak was saving that Stardust specifically for something like this. So very well done. Xyrak gets his way through this fight. Both Estella and Rydia take a fall right here. Tella, um, you know, doesn't really necessarily need a whole lot of levels. Rydia is still at level 1, though. That's something to keep an eye on to see if Xyrak will decide to keep his Rydia down just from the natural progression of things, or we'll try to get some levels at some point. And we have ourselves a pain man. Cecil sitting, Dark Knight Cecil sitting on the Baron throne.
Cecil, not wanting to be outdone by his friend Kane, decides to become the ultimate betrayer of Baron and take over the throne. That said, rather easy spot, not too much damage output here. The script on this boss is 3 dark waves and you are through. Another one of the free bosses, quote unquote, but in this position, definitely free, and thankfully enough is able to get that life off on the Rydia for her to gain some levels. Seems like Xyrak is not going to let her be strictly a napping child for an anchor. And that said, we see elvensorrow on the side wrapping up Baron in. I'd be curious to see if he's going to stick with his routing. He's already here in Baron. He's got his Tella. He's getting rid of the Porm as well. Both racers are going to have the same party composition. And I think with routing, it would be wise for him to take Baron. But that rat tail may be a bit too tempting.
It's possible, and we have similar parties, but they're not identical, and we have a duplicate Rydia. Womp, womp. Oh no.
Alas, we have not seen any powerful orbs. No Leviathans, no Bahamets, no Dragon Gods. Scythe Marshall in chat bringing up an interesting point. The Xyrak did not full loot Evelyn, so we're not entirely sure. There may be something good for her there that will make her more worthwhile. But at this time, she really only has her Black Mage spells and the Venerable Chocobo.
Also worth considering, like I said, not exactly identical parties, and there's just to tease you, a Murasame, we got some nice Hanzo steel there. Um, Elvensorrow has a fully powered up Tella, while Xyrak has a Tella that it appears as though he fully intends to ditch at the earliest possible convenience. So we're at the point where we know our access to the underworld is the hook. But my goodness, we're in a a horrible situation to be able to do that. Xyrak making this really gutsy check, I would say. It's like, hey, let's at least take a look. There's a tiara for our Rydia, by the way. Best in slot gear for her there, but hey, why don't we check to let's see who's at least in the underground. Why not? Why not? Let's just take a quick peek.
Indeed, you never know who it's gonna be. It could be your water hag, could be your any number of the free bosses. All of a sudden, I'm drawing blank here, but you make a very good point. That Tella is actually fair bit useful, having gone through ordeals. But we do have elements here. Xyrak may be regretting not having the fully powered up Tella because a Fire 3 in that spot might have done some work. That said, that spot is high enough power. I don't know if that would have done it by itself. But nonetheless, that is a fair bit of knowledge to know that is not a terribly hard fight once you have a leveled up party, as long as you're able to exploit those weaknesses from the elements.
All right, so now it just appears as though Xyrak and Elvensorrow just doing what the other person hasn't done. Xyrak says, let's go ahead and do ordeals. Let's commit to it at this point in time. Elvensorrow is going to be doing Baron. We'll be rewarded with second Rydia. We still, I mean, we've not found anything for this Rydia. Now, it's interesting that neither of these runners have checked the free summon spot that's available on the front side of Mount Hobbs. Normally, where Rydia learns Fire 1 for the first time because she's scared of fire, and then casts Fire 1 to be able to melt the ice. Instead, in Free Enterprise, going there with a Rydia early will allow you to learn a free summon. Now, it can be anything. It can be Titan, which is fantastic. It can be Sylph, which some people say is even better. It can be Asura. It can be all sorts of things. It can also be something like Mage, which is kind of useless. But right at the moment, I think going there and checking that is better than having a dead character slot right now, to me.
Definitely, especially with a dead adjacent spot with Tella. That said, we're running out of options here on the overworld, and that hook is looking more and more required. Tella may find his worth, as I mentioned earlier, as a blink caster. If you can get Rosa up to blink, Tella up to blink, and with the ability to bypass Antlion's counter scripts by maybe sticking to spells and the power command, it's still going to be a very difficult fight, but if you can keep your blinks up, it may be doable. Just a heck of a grind.
Exactly. I was thinking for a second, it's like, wouldn't Porum have been nice to be able to get some extra blinks rolling with that Antlion? But Tella and Rosa can do the heavy lifting, I suppose.
Why not 3, right?
All the white mages. You don't need Bacchus wines when you have 3 characters capable of casting it. Invenerable in chat asking, sorry, stepped away. Did Xyrak peek the basement throne? Yep, it was an elements fight. It was a not fun elements fight.
So all the leg in the seed, quarter and full, has been discovered. But as our runners are kind of following up and doing checks that the other one has done, I'd like to take the opportunity to shout out S-Grunt on our restream team, handling the restream tonight, Tybalt on tracking, Vitasia on comms with myself. It's wonderful to be in the booth here with y'all, and for the behind the scenes work you're putting in. Also take the opportunity to let y'all know, if you're new to the stream, you're new to Free Enterprise, and it's interesting, you're enjoying yourself. We have a wonderful Discord full of wonderful people that take the time to welcome in new people and is extremely welcoming. So head on over to the Discord, join up. We'll help you along the way. We'll help you learn, and in no time you could be having fun yourself with this wonderful, very entertaining game.
All right, so Xyrak getting through this Mount Ordeals fight, getting his Tela activated fully. Meanwhile, elvensorrow is setting up for the Baron fight, or on the Baron throne, which we know is just a Dark Knight Cecil. Should be able to get through it, I think, quite a bit easier than Xyrak did. Won't even necessarily need to cast a life spell because his Rydia has gained spells.
Oh, elvensorrow taking a moment to loot the 3 chests in Baron and finds an Artemis bow, the best bow in the game, and really can give a really nice damage pop to Rosa. If we're able to find a heroine robe, or if there's a heroine robe available in shop, that can make her actually maybe primarily the heavy hitter on this team.
In the meantime, Xyrak is we got some early sirens in our kit to start the game, and opting to go ahead and crack these sirens on top of Mount Ordeals. We can get some at least decent experience on the top of Mount Ordeals with these Liliths that are up here. Liliths. I knew that was right. Decent experience anyway. We saw a couple levels that were already got, and more importantly, these things are weak to fire, so really they go down pretty quick, all things said.
John Burkhead in chat bringing up that we did see a heroine robe in the shop at Baron. So I can imagine that, I'm not sure if Xyrak checked, I know elvensorrow did, but that really can make for a little bit easier of a fight. Once again, that antlion at the Rubicon spot on the hook route can be really rude with its counters, only executes its counter script when you use the fight command, and Rosa having the aim command, she can bypass that and not trigger those counters. So all the more reason to get that Rosa online and hopefully put out a little bit more damage, contribute, and hopefully make the fight a little bit easier.
And for those of you who are just joining us, coming in from other streams, allow me to summarize. We have Antlion at the Rubicon spot, and blocking our path, required hook into the underground, and we have a terrible party. We have Rydia, Rosa, Tela, and Yang. And not a lot of great equipment, not a lot of great levels to be had. It's just kind of been lots of blah.
This is truly a trying seed, on top of not great equipment, no powerful orbs for that Rydia, and we've already discovered for the seed who our dupe character is, and sure enough, it's another Rydia, so not a lot of melee to go around.
I'm really kind of surprised that Xyrak is opting to check the Watery Pass instead of clearing out more of Evelyn Castle. We've only seen right side Evelyn Castle up to this point in time. Not that he isn't getting some decent stuff like a Glass Helm, which is nice. I mean, very, very good physical damage reduction, but we know where the goods are. Evelyn Castle has a lot of the goods and a very high likelihood of having something that what someone in this party can use. Not that we enjoy necessarily seeing the monster checks immediately, but we'll make it work.
It's looking more and more like you may have to make it work, but Xyrak, I think, is just trying his best to check all of his available checks, not just character and key items, but also loot. Hoping maybe to spike some good gear, especially defensive gears for this party to help him get through that very punchy antlion at that spot. But we see Elvensorrow taking some trap chests, Xyrak looking to be right behind him. I think Xyrak finally is committing to taking the rest of Evelyn after maybe hoping that he could get away from it and not commit so much time.
Meanwhile, interesting, using coffins and then a little bit of a life glitch, trying to get some extra levels on the party here, using some coffins, but also life glitching the black cats here. Hoping that we can get through, but Jan's charmed now. All right, at least two people got some experience.
Indeed, kind of a heads up play here. You do get some somewhat decent experience from these chests and taking advantage of the life glitch. We saw Xyrak actually take a little bit of a grind on ordeals, and I think Elvin's hoping to get a little bit of a grind as well as some good gear. Unfortunately, Excalibur, while a fantastic sword, not going to do anything for this party. No Cecil in sight so far.
That's one of those things that I'm like, really, Seed? Really? That's what you're giving to me?
Indeed, a little bit of a cruel joke considering how difficult this has been. It just seems all the more like this overworld is teasing you at this point.
Xyrak takes the same treasure chest. Now remember, Xyrak did that little mini grind up on Mount Ordeal, so I think is at slightly better levels to get through it with less stress than Elvensorrow did. Gungnir Spear. Okay, we're just getting equipment for everyone that is not appearing in this seed.
And Elvensorrow running into one of the most dreaded bosses here early, the inventory boss. Alas, as we've mentioned, there's been quite a bit of looting, maybe a little more than most people would do. But that does pose some interesting challenges here while you're trying to do so. You got to have some management. That said, a Stardust Rod, a fantastic find, maybe to give Tella a little more oomph behind the black magic he may cast. Rydia, if we do find some good spells for her, that Jin on Hobbs, I don't know if Elvensorrow checked the Hobbs spot yet, but that Stardust Rod does give you a nice bump to your wisdom stat that affects your black magic and will make her a little bit more of a force.
I don't think Xyrak got that Stardust Rod. I don't think he went up the middle at all.
Interesting double dipping Evelyn and not taking the whole castle. I think Xyrak maybe is feeling behind, which would be odd considering how challenging this is. I would probably myself as a runner be assuming that my opponent would be struggling just as much as myself, but maybe hoping that if he can push through, he can get that one more step ahead without having to struggle through more trap chest and more checks.
I mean, I do not know the rationale. Meanwhile, Elvensorrow is showing us not an often used strat. Charm Claw Yang. Charm Claw does damage as if it were a mute knife, I believe, or I don't know exactly how it works, but for whatever reason, Charm Claw just destroys these ogres and destroys mages as well, which is not intuitive at all. Oh, Charm Claw hits giant. Okay, thank you, Tibble. Does not hit mages. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as you were pointing out, those mad ogres, not the most apparent from their looks and their name, but they are indeed mages. So if you have mute knives, mute arrows, which I do believe there were mute arrows in inventory, that can get you through, even if they are very, very punchy. But we now are seeing a purple robe at Hook Route 1, and we have Mylon and friends to dance us into the Hook Route.
Not overly difficult here. Um, I mean, the lips might do a little bit of damage, but other than that, this is going to be relatively straightforward. Plus, we get a free heal immediately afterwards. So, all things said, I think this is going to be pretty easy at this point in time. Um, Elvensorrow did pick up a Moon Veil, which, uh, by the way, makes that antlion fight trivial. And there's another Excalibur.
Now we have one for Edge to throw and one for Cecil to equip. If only we could find them. But indeed, as you bring up a Moonveil, wonderful, wonderful item. Not only bestows wall on your character, but also makes them impervious to physical attacks, of which that is all Antlion does. So while it may lead to a very long fight with not a lot of damage output, you can have that put on maybe your Yang or Rosa, whoever's putting out the most damage. And as long as you don't trigger that counterattack, that antlion will not be able to hit you, and you'll be able to just get right on through, even if it takes you a lot longer than maybe you would like it to.
Yeah, Elven Sorrow, I think, is showing here that the best strategy in free enterprise is not necessarily to rush yourself if you're not comfortable with the fight. I think Xyrak here, and Xyrak, is a fantastic runner, but I do get the sense that he's pushing himself maybe a little bit further than he may be comfortable with, just because he may feel a little bit behind. And the fights that he is getting ready to take are not going to be fun. To the point where he's risking wiping because he feels behind and he feels like he has to. Meanwhile, Elven Sorrow, instead of risking those wipes, was just taking his time, full clearing all of Eblan Castle. Now, he picked up a couple Excals, which aren't going to do necessarily anything, but that Moon Veil, that Stardust Rod, uh, are going to pay major dividends, not just at this Antlion fight, but as the seed continues to go through. I think Xyrak is going to struggle a little bit to get through this Antlion fight. If he does, fantastic, but I think it's going to take him a while, and he may have a reset or two.
Question in chat from Mr. Bus Driver. Moonveil will stop the counter. No, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vitasia, I am fairly certain that the Moonveil will not stop the counter. That said, Antlion's counter is only triggered by the fight command. So if with a Yang in this party, if you use power, that won't trigger it. If you use aim with Rosa, that won't trigger it as well. So you can kind of bypass that as long as you use a non-fight command.
Correct. So he's using power with Yang right now and trying to get some other party members up right now. I There's an illusion that was right there, but here's the risk. He was stable with Yang and Rosa up, but trying to get Rydia up, I think, was a risky play, and now we're back to Antlion kind of controlling the pacing in this particular fight. I think at this point you just have to commit to a slower, hey, let's just make sure we have blink on our two characters, that the one character doing damage and the other one who can cast blink, and kind of commit yourself to that.
Elvensorrow coming up right behind now in the Mylon and Friends fight. I think we're going to see whether that little bit of extra levels and equipment is going to play out. Stardust Rod already paying dividends, using it as an item to cast Stardust, getting rid of all of the friends, leaving Mylon lonely at the party, and going to make relatively short work, it seems. Rosa putting out quite a bit of damage, Double Claw and Yang putting out damage, I think maybe almost more than the equipment. Those levels from the trap chest are going to be quite a heavy benefit for him.
Yep, we see Xyrak struggling here a little bit, trying to make sure that the party stays up. And right now has Rosa and Rydia up, trying to get his Yang back up, who can do that punch. And it's a bit of a struggle right now.
Oh, and the AI not being friendly at all, immediately punching Yang back down. A little bit of a chase here, but thankfully getting life on all the party. Hopefully getting that antlion to ignore Yang. Oh, unfortunately, no. You know, as both of our runners struggle, Vitasia, I'd be curious as a seasoned runner yourself, what would be your play on this one? Is there any strats that maybe our runners aren't seeing that we have the benefit of being in the booth and not feeling that pressure that they're feeling right now?
Well, I think at first blush, if I do not have the Moon Veil and I'm approaching it from Xyrak's point of view, I think I commit myself to trying to get as many people up with Blink strats. I have a Rosa and a Tella, and I just commit those two to trying to blink the party up. It was a little rough, but you know, get to a point where you feel comfortable stabilizing the party. If it's just Yang using power and that's all you can really get up comfortably, I would rather this fight take 20 minutes and get through comfortably than trying to panic keeping everyone up at the same time. That Moon Veil, though. Moon Veil, and then Blink if you want to keep another party member up. Moon Veil on Yang, and the fight is officially trivial from that point forward.
Well, it looks like Xyrak has stabilized that party, has everyone up, everyone blinked, including both of the blink casters. Looks like he is putting some damage out from the Rydia with that Jhin. Once again, maybe not as much as you would like, but at this point, you're going to take whatever you can get and just make it through this fight. I think once you break through, you've got a pan in hand to do 2 checks there. You have your free check. At the chest in Feymarch, and maybe a nice dwarf castle to give you one more character check. Really hoping that you can find someone to really up your damage after, taking 50 minutes as we're approaching the 50-minute mark and going over the 50-minute mark. You gotta feel behind if you're not underground quite yet. It's definitely been a very rude overworld.
So it's interesting that elvensorrow also is, I mean, trying to get other party members up. I don't necessarily blame him for wanting to get other party members up. If anything, elvensorrow would benefit more from trying to get the full party up just because his Rydia is so much better equipped to, with that Stardust Rod. I mean, the Stardust Rod, off the top of my head, it's plus 15 to your magic casting stat there for your black magician, so you can do quite a bit more damage just with equipping that rod with the Jhin summon, or if you put it on Tella with that virus as well.
Now, to your knowledge, Phytasia, when you use something like, say, the Stardust Rod as an item to cast the Stardust spell, does the Wisdom stat play into that, or is it strictly based off of a preset damage? I guess I want to say algorithm, and not the right word, but a formula.
Yeah, it's a fixed damage value. I mean, you can count on it doing like 700 to 900 damage or so, which at this point might as well. You're doing about as much, just a little bit under the damage that Yang is doing right now with his punches at this point. So yeah, I would say Stardust away if you have nothing better to do, honestly.
Yes, I believe my memory serves me that that elvensorrow did not check the front of Hobbs, and did not get that Jhin on Rydia. So, but he did get that Stardust Rod. That said, he is sticking with just having a stable 2-person party, not having to worry too much about casting Blink on everybody and keeping up with this Antlion. All the more so because his Yang is putting out some decent damage, over 1,000 per punch, or approaching 1,000 per punch, depending on roll. So once again, it seems to be a case of slow and steady wins the race on both racer side.
Well, and we're in a position right now where both runners are effectively just down to their roses and yongs, and they're power punching and blinking, both of them. Elven Sorrow, despite having the Moon Veil, where I would consider this kind of the ideal location for a Moon Veil, just because it would allow you a little bit more flexibility in getting other party members up to do more damage. I can see wanting to save it for something worse or nasty. Um, but I'm also one of those guys that I'm going to use an elixir if I need MP and I'm on Mount Ordeals because I want to get through this fast, honestly. So I don't know. I'm of the opinion where if you have resources here, use it because this is nasty. Anything you can do to make this faster will benefit you in the long run because this should this is and should feel like a bottleneck for these two brothers. They should both know right now that this is going to block the other guy at the same time. So whoever gets through this as fast as you possibly can, if you can feel better about this particular fight, you can feel better about the rest of the race.
Yes, I am certainly firmly in the camp of the sort of RPG player that hoards elixirs and mega elixirs and goes into the final boss. But that being said, running a randomizer where at the end of the day you are trying to beat your opponent and be as speedy as possible really makes you think twice about utilizing your items and how best to use it. But Elven Sorrow through that antline got into that fight later than Xyrak, but those few extra levels, those few extra items paid dividends, and we see our first runner getting to the underground shortly. GG's to Elven Sorrow at 54, almost 55 minutes. I'm sure he is wiping a bead of sweat from his brow to finally be through that fight.
Now the question becomes, and Xyrak right behind him, by the way, and we find the Yang karate fight at the top of Lower Babel, by the way. Um, so we are 55 minutes into this race. We are just now getting through what is a very nasty antlion fight. How behind do you feel if you're either of these runners, not knowing where the other guy is? I mean, I think you feel behind regardless, but does that change your routing at all? Does that change any of your decision making moving through here? Remember, this is a win or go home race. What do you do?
I mean, I can't. I would simultaneously feel behind and not behind only because I know my opponent had to go through that same meat grinder as me with this same party. That said, I think my take, and it seems to be Elven Sorrows as well, is go take advantage of what you can do for free and maybe, I think maybe hope that you can spike something like a package or a Sand Ruby that will give you a free character check and finally fill that party out. I can only imagine he is looking to ditch that Rydia, and at this point being underground, probably the Tella as well. I think you've got 2 key item checks, 3 key item checks potentially with that pan, and you also have the chest down in the Fey March. Do your freebies, another one of the mantra, do your objectives, do your freebies, take advantage, speak of the devil. We see a Sand Ruby there at the Sylph Cave. Crossing your fingers, you can maybe fill out your party a little bit better with that.
I think Elven Sorrow has a little bit more of an incentive to check that Sand Ruby, simply because he picked up a couple of Excaliburs when he was doing Castle Evelyn. So I imagine Elven Sorrow will be checking those eventually, dropping off and getting the superior airship. And it is superior because it's called the Enterprise. It's not the Falcon. This isn't called Free Falcon. It's called Free Enterprise. Although, Boardface, if you're listening, Free Falcon for April 1st edition of Free Enterprise. I'm just saying. Possible.
And that could prove to be a really cheeky little skin swap for an April Fool's. Another fun thing with the randomizer on April Fool's, usually there is some sort of fun flag. The infamous Push B to Jump, a flag set that I quite enjoy as a runner, came about as an April Fool's and became such a fan favorite. It has stuck around. Elven Sorrow with Xyrak fresh on the heels with this pan check. And first from Sheila 1, we get a Magma Key. Day late and a dollar short, unfortunately, Sheila, but a Darkness Crystal. Now the whole game is wide open to you. You are able to go to the moon. That is another character check. Vitasia, what do? You have two character checks right there.
Step one, check the crystal. Check the sand ruby. Darkness crystal. Oh my gosh, because we have 3 objectives. We need a pink tail, and we need. Oh my goodness, and we need the tower key. Yeah, I'm checking the sand ruby, but after that, I want to check my underground shops because honestly, we still have a free check-in in the Fey March, and let's face it, if that's a pigtail, that's a free adamant armor. We have a cane available to us. And Elvensorrow doesn't pick up the cane. Xyrak does.
That is an interesting decision. Perhaps Elvin Sorrow thinking that with the levels he's picked up, that Kane just quite isn't good enough. I think the best weapon we've seen for Kane is a Gungear Spear. We haven't seen a White or a Dragoon. Perhaps holding out, like you said, 2x Cals in the inventory, burning a hole in a pocket, Cecil or bust, especially with that Darkness Crystal. Maybe you don't commit to him, waste the time of waking him up and getting him in the party before you make sure that he's actually going to be useful.
But then, yeah, I like this moon play as well. I mean, you check the shop and you check a character. Um, it I probably would check the shops first because I want my grind, and then I'll worry about my party at that point in time. Like I can make this party work. I would be happy about it, but I can make the party work. But I'm most worried about my grind. I want to know where my sirens are.
I think that's a really interesting thought process as well. You have darkness. If you can find sirens, there's your grind. You can probably take some gold dragons in the lunar subterrane, especially if you find hourglasses. And maybe the thought process being that if you are feeling really far behind and you're having a bit of a struggle here, you just charge that moon. You have 3 objectives up there. You have what is it, 6 key item checks up there. Maybe you think if I can make that decision sooner than my opponent, I can get a leg up.
And there's your sirens available there in Dwarf Castle for Xyrak doing that. Uh, all right, so we're getting our final character check.
7 coffins in the inventory as well, so you don't even necessarily need to uh, really struggle if you decide to say crack eggs in the underground. You've got 7 eggs, easy peasy, right down the drain, and you're sitting 10 key items adjacent. That's got to feel good. But we see a foo up on the moon. Is this even?
Well, I mean, there's your immediate Tele upgrade. And instead, we're like, no, we're going to ditch Rydia. So, uh, come, okay.
Very interesting choice, but I think, as it's been mentioned before, we have not found anything really compelling for Rydia. So, while it is, I think, maybe a little more logical in most situations to ditch the Tela, maybe the thought process is the Rydia with some levels on her is not nearly as useful as at least some tier 3 spells and Virus and Blink and even a little bit of Curing as well.
Yeah, chat pointing out, I mean, it makes sense because Rydia hasn't necessarily found a decent summon. At the same time, that means you're not really committing to reflect stress at this point in time, because at this point, if you have an all mage party right now, and you have a Fu and you have a Rosa, and really Yang is your only physical damage dealer, but he would be great to set up to let him just sit back and have a Star Veil and reflect nukes off of because of his high HP pool. Um, but you're not quite there. You're not quite ready to fully let us bounce nukes off of a walled Yang yet, because you're getting rid of that Rydia. Um, that being said, Fu's a fantastic pickup. I think it came down to, okay, who do I want in my party, Rydia or Tella at that point. Xyrak, meanwhile, picked up his cane, has not turned in the Darkness Crystal, is going for a more physical party at this point in time, and has opted not to go to the moon. So extreme route divergence right now. Finds a water hag in the dwarf castle. Xyrak also opted to crack a handful of eggs to get some levels on his party.
That has to be a huge relief after struggling with levels in the overworld and a very, very rude hook seed. It's got to take a vast amount of pressure off to be able to dismiss and not have to worry about those levels. But Elvensorrow diving Cave Bahamut, seeing a lunar sparkle, and finding apparently Bahamut's cousin has come to stay at his home, a wyvern at Cave Bahamut. Indeed, a rude find here, but able to get a Star Veil off, a Reflect off, and unfortunately not enough to take it down in one shot.
No, and here's where the dangerous part comes in. Wyvern, does not cast hard enough to do a ton of damage reflected back at him. The issue that comes in is it's enough to still wipe the party. And now he's going to start reflecting nukes off of himself, which is going to get really, really painful very, very quickly.
Indeed, this spot does have low magic power, being kind of a more magic-focused spot. As a way to balance it, the game's designers did kind of give it less magic attack. That said, those nukes will do it, especially with a party this low. Xyrak finding Val in the Dwarf 2 spot. I know the Dwarf 1 spot, it can prove to be rather rude, but even better, finding that Cecil and having to feel even more relieved having a little bit extra DPS in the party, now having a Kayn and a Cecil. It has to feel really great after struggling with that rougher party.
Yeah, Cecil, and remember, Xyrak did at least do one trap chest in Eblan Castle, one of which was one of our two Excals, so uh, definitely has an Excal Cecil online ready to go. Even after those levels, I think this is a fantastic spot for Xyrak to be in. Elvensorrow has Fu, which will absolutely prove beneficial, and is doing kind of the more obvious checks because it's exactly what you want to see. He checked Cape Bahamut, couldn't quite do that. We'll be checking the Crystal Sword altar and the White Spear altar next, just keeping to his objectives. Xyrak, meanwhile, not turning in the Darkness Crystal yet, is staying on the blue planet a little bit longer. Still just trading away the Pinktail and destroying the Super Cannon. Just 2 more key items is all we need. I like this route divergence. I kind of like what both the runners are doing right now, though. It's amazing. We had that bottleneck there at Antline to get underground, and then completely went in totally opposite directions from that point.
It is interesting to see the divergence, and I think it speaks to the different philosophies of these two racers. Xyrak kind of taking the more tried and true method here, doing the more traditional checks, I would say, in the underground, sticking with something that's a little more appropriate for his party levels. While Elvin going up to the moon, doing that character check, and I'm not sure if the thought process maybe is at least peeping, getting a little bit of knowledge, hoping that you find yourself a free boss in that spot. But definitely a little more of a risky play having a Tella and a party that is sub 30s. That's going to be difficult even with a quote unquote free boss. Just about every spot here on this moon is quite punchy. And without proper anchoring, it's going to be difficult to get through this. Even something, say, the Dark Imps that traditionally are a little easier. That said, Ogo Pogo on the Crystal Sword altar is definitely not free.
No, sometimes you can get lucky and get some really nice spots here. Ogo Pogo is the opposite, not what you necessarily want to see right out of the gate here. So we have, let's recap here. Our required moon objectives so far are Wyvern at cave value and Ogo Pogo at the Crystal Sword altar. Rude either way that you look at it.
It seems that the moon bosses all decided to go shuffle around amongst their neighbors, and none of them migrated south or down to the earth. We are very moon heavy here. That said, interesting for such a difficult fight. Elven is not resetting out and choosing to soldier ahead and see if he can get through this boss. I think probably fair enough to say one of the ruder, more difficult bosses in the game. It's going to be pretty fantastic win if he can make his way through it, but it's going to be difficult.
He's trying. Oh my goodness, he's trying. He's got Yang zerked up. Has done a lot of damage, although that Fu was in the middle of a long cast. I don't think... Yeah, there's the last punch.
Oh, a valiant effort on that front, but I'm curious to see what choice he's gonna make here. Double checking his equipment, maybe trying to go one more try on that. Feeling like if he lowers that battle speed, he'll have some better luck here and get a little more menuing in. And indeed, he's gonna give it another shot. Xyrak charging down the Fey March and is gonna check our two bosses at that spot, and we see the Magus sisters at Leviathan, and that is going to be Mylon Z at Ashura spot.
Mylon, I mean, with the levels that he's gained up to this point in time, Mylon should be relatively easy. We'll want to cast some more Blink, but we also have Excalibur Cecil, which does work against undead.
Indeed. Remind me, is it 4 times damage that Mylon Z is weak to the Holy effect, which that Excal has? So Cecil is definitely going to be slicing and dicing through this Mylon.
Yeah, at this point, it's just a matter of trying to keep the party up, because it's kind of a punchy spot. He's doing some damage at this point in time. So you have to be able to keep the party up, although Rosa knows Cure 3 at this point in time, so can do a reasonable job of keeping folks up. Casting Blink. The real issue is that a Berserk Cecil does not cover automatically, which I hope you weren't planning on Cecil doing any sort of automatic covering, because, yeah, Young's going to fall right over, but gets through.
Xenocat in chat clarifying Mylon is both undead and holy weakness, so just 2 times to the holy. But there we go, we get through and we see a package. Also, as we were kind of commentating on that Ogo Pogo spot, we did miss the free chest in Fey March was the pass. Interesting, Xyrak warping out, choosing not to attack those sisters. I don't believe we have seen mute knives. I know we had a stack of 10 mute arrows. That may not be enough. Xyrak maybe going for a little more sure play rather than struggling and beating his head up against another boss after struggling with the antlion like they did, and choosing to go for a keyless tower. Interesting play, considering the super cannon is an objective to take on the tower before you have the key item that you need to go through that. And
Well,
thank you, Tybalt. Sorry about that. Tybalt clarifying pass was in dwarf, not in the chest. I apologize.
Well, in the meantime, Elvensorrow finds Octomom as our White Spear Altar. This might be a little bit more doable. It can hit a little bit hard, but it's just a matter of like making sure you're getting hits in at this point in time. Thunderclaw also does quite a bit of damage. I think as soon as you're on a nice roll, it becomes to the point where Octomom barely swings at all. And this is not necessarily a high HP spot either, so I think this is doable. Barely, if you can get through here. We'll see if we can get through here. Meanwhile, Xyrak, yeah, top of the tower. Here he goes.
Yang giving us a lovely dance and then confronting us. I don't believe the spot is too terribly punchy. It is proving to be a little fast, but with Rosa able to cast Blink and Berserk, it should not take too long. The spot does have a surprising amount of HP, a little more than you would anticipate for its position in the game, but there's Xyrak showing a great knowledge of scripting with that fight after the first kick. It is scripted that all you have to do is bonk that Yang with Cecil to trigger the script, and he will go right on down. You don't actually have to chew through that HP pool, and rewarded with a Legend Sword. If you liked X-Cow before, let's like it for a third time here, and Forge is now available.
Meanwhile, Elvensorrow does get through. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. Required tower key at the vanilla White Spear Altar.
That has to feel fantastic, struggling with some of these checks to not only get through one after wiping twice, but to find a key item. That's got to be reassuring.
That's very, very spicy. Not only is that reassuring from that perspective, his key party members, I think Rosa was the only one who was really alive for most of that. Evil Wall, that's not looking great at all, but we're gonna try to get through here. Yeah, it's still very punchy. Everything on the moon is punchy. Oh my goodness, but you got to feel good about that tower key check. Here's the thing, with Xyrak, if Xyrak is planning on not even touching the moon until he's done everything else, we have this Earth Crystal check, which is going to be a bit of a rabbit hole that may lead to nothing. We also have a Luka key check that could possibly lead to nothing. We also have a Heart that could possibly lead to nothing. So there's a lot of traps that Xyrak could fall in, whereas Elvensorrow going immediately up to a moon and at least checking those things has the tower key already. So unless, that's just one fewer thing for Elvensorrow to get trapped behind or lost behind. So even though he's taken some wipes, might have been a worthwhile investment.
I think so. You're already going to have to come back up here to the moon. Unfortunately, you're not going to probably get through that Cave Bahamut fight at Wyvern. So getting that key item, you're probably feeling like when you have to go back underground and do some checks there, you can be a little bit more effective. You can full clear the tower. You can do Dwarf Castle. You can do Fey March, and maybe if we find a Luka key, do Seal Cave as well, and one trip that down there. So even if you struggled up here on the moon, you made kind of a difficult choice to go through these bosses lower leveled. Hopefully it's going to play out well. But speaking of the moon, I think Xyrak looks to have finally made the decision. It is time. Picked up quite a bit more levels, did a lot of those underground checks, and is going to be well better positioned to take on some of these bosses. And it will be interesting to see what the routing decision is there. If he starts in the Lunar Subterrane, goes to Cave Bahamut to try and knock that out. And I think he's going to be in a better position to get through those checks and maybe clear the moon without having to come back.
true. I kind of expected Xyrak to waste a little bit more time on the moon. We haven't done. I mean, we did one of the Fey March fights, but other than that, it seems like Tybalt is fine with abandoning both the Leviathan spot and the Earth Crystal, and says, "Let's go to the moon. Let's do these objectives," uh, which we know at least in one case is the right play.
Absolutely. And with the Earth Crystal, the argument could be made to go check on the treasury, see if you can pick up some good equipment. But, with some already good equipment there and a shop to check and maybe some tier 8 or tier 7 gear from what would be your zonks up here if you don't get key items. I think, like you said, let's focus on objectives and just get through it. elvensorrow on his side through the first half of the Dr. Luggage fight. Dr. Luggage deciding to pack up and vacation on the moon for this seed. And now just needs to get through the second fight. That said, that Thunderclaw is going to do some fantastic work in this fight. Dr. Luggage very weak to Thunder as a machine. And lit arrows on Rosa as well. This should not be too much of a struggle.
No, gets through there and finally getting some levels on the rest of the party. Lit arrows as well. Foo's finally at full power, and excuse me, Grunt, wherever you're at, you didn't shuffle this well enough. The Masamune was still there.
We have had our fair bit of tasty vanilla in this seed, indeed. Both are runners now on the subtrain. Interesting enough, those you normally would think maybe to see an exit and to head back to Earth, having that tower key in hand. But it looks like elvensorrow is going to choose to stay on the moon and maybe take advantage of those levels he gained to try and get through the Crystal Sword altar that he struggled with before. Especially now fully powered Fu, he might be able to get through that Ogopogo now without quite as much of a struggle. Xyrak seeing that Wyvern and resetting right out. I'm going to guess didn't set his battle speed to Wyvern standard time and is doing so now and will charge back down there.
Keep in mind, Xyrak also has a curse string that he can throw on one of his characters if he wants to maintain a little bit more control. We'll see what ends up happening right now. Just turning down the battle speed at the moment to try to get a little bit more control. Not doing any sort of extra equipment though. elvensorrow looks like is going to be taking another wing at this Ogopogo. Oh, Yang did have it on? Okay, he just did it so quickly. Okay.
Yeah, the great thing about that cursed ring is even if you get some levels on some of these characters like Yang and Sid, it will bring down their agility enough to make them serviceable anchors to get through some of these meaner fights in these faster spots without having to maybe take time to go and pick up a dedicated anchor and spend time between heals putting them back down on the ground. So it does give you that much more of an advantage. Being able to get that many more Starveils off too with good anchoring on Xyrak's side, you now have both of your heavy hitters still standing. So even though that reflected Mega Nuke did not kill the Wyvern, you're going to have two heavy punchers that should do the trick and get through the rest of it before those nukes become that much more of a problem.
Yeah, and between the reflected Mega Nuke and the Zerkers, I think we're set up very well. Like the wall is just now being cast. This is not it's not a huge HP spot, and we're set up to be able to immediately resurrect anyone who might get nuked, and we're through.
Not too difficult a fight for Xyrak, but only a power shirt, so not necessarily what you'd like to see. Objective nonetheless, a good piece of gear for either your Cecil or for your Kayn, but maybe you were hoping to pick up that tower key that he hasn't seen yet. Should be finding it soon. Maybe that pink tail but nonetheless going to exit out, and I can only imagine head right on over to the lunar subterrane. Meanwhile, Elven Sorrow unfortunately took another wipe to Ogopogo, but committed to healing with the party. Thankfully, with that Fu, you have got two healers. With Atella, you've got a little bit more support as well, and you can probably set your Yang up to just punch and just be reactive to this fight. It'll make it that much more difficult. It'll make it a little bit longer, but you certainly will be able to get through.
Yeah, Attila going down right now, but at least the blinks are up on Elven Sorrow's side, so this looks to be a doable fight from this point on. Yang is zerked up and ready to go. If you're Xyrak here, that food looks mighty nice, but do you ditch your Yang? Do you ditch your Rosa? What's your call here?
You know, if I were to ditch either, I would ditch the Rosa. You know, you've got a healer in Fu, and then you also have an attacker. Yang's got his levels and is useful not only as an anchor, but at least a little bit of punching duty with the Thunderclaw. But sure enough, Xyrak choosing to stick with the party that he has taken time and invested levels and scrambled omelets with. So that Fu, not something you necessarily see too often in this flag set, is being dismissed.
Yeah, it's, that's an interesting call. I can certainly understand it. You've already committed kind of the levels to this party. More than that, you've had no levels on Fu up to this point in time. So by the time you're ready for Z, Fu is going to be not great HP levels. 1900, maybe barely breaking 2000. Rosa is going to be a little bit healthier. More than that, we don't have a whole lot of decent equipment to help mitigate that right at the moment for any sort of caster. So I actually like the play from Xyrak, ditching the Fu at this point in time and relying on your Zerk party. Elven Sorrow, meanwhile, through... Oh, that's a Luca key there.
Oh, that is interesting. Not a terminal item. That is a check. So while he may not have found something like, say, the Harp or the Earth Crystal yet, that could still be a pink tail. We're still looking for a pink tail. But that said, I think that Elven Sorrow's had enough of the lunar subterrane. Popping a cabin, though, so interesting enough, I wonder if he'll go back and check the Murasame altar, or just head on over to Cave Value and give one more whirl around with that Wyvern.
Looks like he is diving back in. Worth noting, that is Elven Sorrow's 10th key item, so will get the rewards from extra experience from this point forward. Xyrak's had his 10th key item for a little bit at this point. And Bacchus all around for the party right now.
With that fully level party, Xyrak, I cannot imagine we'll struggle too hard with these moon checks. Should get through them that much faster than Elven Sorrow. Elven Sorrow, my guess, feeling behind and thinking to himself that maybe just full clear the moon and hopefully never have to come back here again. Also, maybe looking to pick up a few more levels so he can put some more hurt down on that Wyvern when he finally does get over to Cave Bahamut. That sense finds the CPU fight. Not necessarily a difficult fight to execute on, but certainly a long fight with this party. That CPU orb is going to put up a wall. You're not going to be able to cast most spells on it, at least kind of spells without defaulting back to reflected float strats. So really, you really only have punchiness from Yang and arrows from Rosa, but indeed it looks like Elven Sorrow is going to give a go on that reflected float strats.
I mean, I think you have to. If you're set up with kind of a mage majority party right now, I think you feel like you have to do that.
Yeah, indeed, I agree. You just don't have the power to really sit there and put a lot of damage on that back orb with your physical attacks. So you got to figure out some way to land some magic. That said, the reflective float unfortunately hits that CPU, so it's not going to be vulnerable. Despite what these orbs look like, they are bouncing up and down slowly, but they are still vulnerable to Quake. Which is what the reflected float strat is trying to do, is land that float on that front attacker so that it no longer will be affected by Quake, so that you can hopefully start casting Quake and damage that back CPU unit without killing that front attacker and getting to the Globe 99 attacks.
Meanwhile, Xyrak on his Octomom, moving much faster with 3 melee rolling through as opposed to 1.5 with Yang and Rosa. Elvensorrow decides this is going to take too much time and resets out. This is, I kind of feel for Elvensorrow. The one divergence that sent him to the moon instead of staying in the world, missing out on that Cecil that's in Dwarf Castle, that decision, that one minor divergence has sent these two runners in just two wildly different directions, and they are in two wildly different positions right now. I think Xyrak, between the levels he has and the route that he's currently on, is set up to be in much better shape than Xyrak. Now, Elvensorrow's not eliminated by any stretch. I mean, if this tower key that Xyrak just ended up getting ends up leading him to the Pinktail, whereas Xyrak's going to stay up on the moon and do some other checks here. I think that is Elvensorrow's only hope right now, to be perfectly honest.
Absolutely, it's gotta feel a little rough leaving the moon, leaving an objective behind. But at the same time, if you get a lucky roll and Rando's gonna rando and you're gonna pull the pink tail here, you're gonna have access to an adamant armor. You already have those excals. We'll see if he checks Dwarf Castle. If he does and finds that Cecil, I can imagine he'll feel a little bit more behind, maybe thinking that Xyrak has the absolute cannon that is Cecil, but you have all the tools to make him useful, and you find those sirens, you find your grind, you've got your 10 key items. You can make Cecil viable very, very quickly with a quick egg grind, and be back in this and hopefully have some good routing. That said, you also have the pass in Dwarf Castle. Probably not going to be used on Elvensorrow's side. I imagine he's not going back to the moon till he can guarantee he takes down Bahamut and he's able to just walk straight onto Z.
Meanwhile, Xyrak does reset out of the Evil Wolf fight. I think he just disappointed in the setup that he has. Now getting his Zerkers online. Yeah, just committing to using Bacchus Wines.
Yeah, as mentioned before, when Elvensorrow ran into Evil Wall, it is a very punchy spot here. If you can get your team up and running and get this Evil Wall down, they're certainly going to be hitting hard. Toss a couple blinks up for some defense, and shouldn't be too much of a struggle with the right setup.
It's interesting to think how our fortunes have turned in this scene, and I think this is instructive for anyone who plays Free Enterprise right now. If you remember, just 30 minutes ago, both of our runners were struggling to get into the underworld because of just one single horrible boss. And within 30 minutes, we have now almost swept through the rest of the checks that we need to make in the underground and on the moon in just like a snap of the fingers. So this seed is really kind of instructive to, even if you feel like you're behind, keep sawing wood at this point in time, because you can complete a lot of this particular game very quickly if you have your levels right, if things just happen to fall into the right place.
Absolutely. Jay Brun in chat bringing up a really interesting thing here. You've got that Tower King in hand, and you only have two objectives left. One of them, you don't know where the key item is. Vitasia, as a fellow runner yourself, do you have a thought of maybe save scumming up here on the moon, running down, checking that tower key to see if it's got that one item you need left, rather than keep going with these moon checks? I think that is an interesting decision to make, and it's a difficult one to make rather than just clear.
Mm, that's real hard to check, to think, because yeah, you hmm, I think if you feel behind, you do that. At the same time, if you go and destroy the super cannon, like if you're Xyrak and you save scum up on the moon, go down, destroy the super cannon, and it's not there. What are you gonna do? Reset out and then go through that cutscene a second time? And like go back into the moon? I don't know if that ends up being worth it. I mean, maybe you do if you feel like you have to make a gamble, but that that would just feel horrible if it wasn't there, because then you have to do that whole thing a second time. I would not feel very good about that. But that said, this is win or go home. I think you do different things when you're in this kind of tournament situation.
You make a very good point, and I think another aspect of that is that Xyrak is holding on to that pass. So, I think the thought process there then becomes, if I just full clear the moon, I never have to come here again.
Holy
I wonder if he
cow!
would. Oh, speak of the devil, there it is. Oh wow. Elvensorrow probably feeling a little rough on that moon check. Has got to be feeling great finding that pink tail. He's now in go mode.
That I mean, so he just needs to do Cape Bahamut, and that's it. Now I will say this: I like Xyrak's party better. I like Xyrak's party a lot better than I like Elvensorrow's party. But my goodness,
That's a huge pickup, not just for your objective, but adamant armor too. If you're feeling like your party's a little under leveled, that adamant armor boosts your stats so much that it makes them that much more powerful. I think, what is the play here? Now that you have go mode, how much more do you do before you commit to going back to the moon and trying to push through? I think, do you do a character check? You still have Dwarf Castle, potentially. You haven't seen your Cecil. Are you feeling like you need your Cecil to get through the rest of this seed? Hasn't really found the grind. I don't believe Elvensorrow found those sirens. So he has a few choices to make, but now the big decision is, when do you pull the trigger and go face Z?
I think if you're Elvensorrow, you find your grind right now, and he's gonna find it with the sirens right there, and he's gonna feel, oh, what? Okay, so reset out of the sirens that are at that location.
I
Um,
wonder if he's gonna go maybe pick up the cane for the sand ruby and try and level the cane.
I don't know. I mean, there's Starvale. Okay, so he wants Starvale, so he is absolutely planning on Reflex Strats. You have yeah, selling everything is like, hope, I was hope he was here. Not even hesitating. Both X Scouts, by the way. Yeet.
That is a hard commit to reflect strats. Probably thinking, here I am, I know where my grind is, let me find the strat I want. And once again, we've kind of commented on feeling behind and maybe feeling like you need to do something different, take a drastic step to put yourself ahead. And it seems like he is setting himself up for that drastic step indeed.
See, here's what I don't get though. Like, right now, the one objective you have to do is complete Cape Bahamut. That is a wyvern Yes, it's a rude wyvern, but you can do it. Like, you got your star veils. Like, turn the battle speed down, throw those star veils up, you're good. Um, and then he doesn't have the pass, so from there he just has to walk over and do Z. I'd be worried about levels, absolutely. Um, so that's one thing that I'm sure he would like to see as well. Checking all these item shops right now, I don't know what this does for him. To be perfectly honest, I mean, the Soma drop, great. Meanwhile, Xyrak is also making the play that we know, and Xyrak has the levels and has a pass, so will be done much quicker. So even though elvensorrow is in this go mode position first, Xyrak's getting ready to get the pink tail. Absolutely will be turning that in directly. Destroys the super cannon. We'll get the pink tail, turn that in. We'll be throwing that adamant armor on his Cecil, and then we'll be flying immediately over to do Zero Mess, and it's going to be very quick.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you're in Xyrak Choose, you've got to be feeling really good. You've got to feel you've got your go mode. You've got a great party. You have your levels. You know how much of a struggle this seed has been. I can't imagine he's feeling behind, but that's going to be a beeline right to that adamant armor. Probably go right on that Cecil, I can imagine, and then right on over to Toria to open that pass door. And it's gonna be a pretty quick beeline to see for him. Elvin's still looking to be shopping, really searching for something. I don't know if I have quite put together what in particular he's looking for. Maybe something like unicorns or something of that nature to do a Fu and Friends strat, to be able to trigger maybe vampires.
Oh boy, that Xyrak just put the I think just put a curse ring. I saw 29 agility on Yang, which is a horrible agility number that you do not necessarily want on your
Yikes.
anchor.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe making one quick pit stop over in the Tower of Wishes to pick up another anchor, because that Yong may have played out his time. That being said, I think it really depends on if you're feeling behind or you're feeling like you're doing pretty well. And with that full moon clear, I think Xyrak is feeling like he may not be behind, maybe not ahead. It'll be curious to see whether he makes that one quick pit stop to improve his agility situation.
Okay, chat's correcting me. I got him crossed. 28 is ideal, and I know on either side of 28 it gets a little fuzzy. 29, I guess, is fine. 27 is better. Is the worst one. Okay. Thank you for correcting me, chat. I appreciate that.
Agility anchoring to me is all still kind of black magic, unfortunately. I just know the lower the better is usually what I shoot for.
Meanwhile, yeah, Elvin is still trying to finish up his shopping trip, and meanwhile, Z Flag's in chat as Xyrak is on his way to the moon directly, taking the free enterprise shortcut that we all know and love. For those of you who are not necessarily aware, in the free enterprise community, we like to randomize things. Unfortunately, we can't randomize where Zero Miss shows up because that would break the game even further than what we've already got. So what we end up doing is there are more than, I think we've got to be over 600 different sprites that are available for Zero Mus once he shows his true colors. So the question becomes in chat, whose butt are we gonna kick tonight?
And as a follow-up question, is the butt cute? Does it even have a butt? The question for the ages.
I mean, there's lots of butt and buttocks related questions that come out at this point in time. However, really whose butt is the most important. We have our Gur, we have our and we are rewarded with the Speciomus. Okay, so this is when Specio is looking kind of meek and weak here, huh?
Yes, I believe this is Specchio's second form, the first being the cute, cuddly looking teddy bear character. But this is when he takes on the form of the new. This is Specchio from Chrono Trigger in the End of Time, the character that teaches your party magic. He may look demure here, but do not underestimate it. Specchio vexed me quite a bit as a kid playing Chrono Trigger. He was very difficult.
Yeah, chat pointing out this is Specchio's form when you're at 9-9 across the board.
Oh
So
heavens,
this is
that is terrifying.
Meanwhile, Elven Sorrow is going to be rewarded with his crystal, his power shirt, and will be on his way as well to Zeromus. Will have to take the long walk of shame, unfortunately.
Yeah, the power shirt will put a little bit more oomph behind that Yang as your only physical person there. That said, obviously Reflect Strats being the primary form of damage there. Elvin, for all of his struggles, has his crystal in hand, has his path to Z, and has to feel like after having a difficult seed is very happy to be wrapping it up and be on his way to Z. Alas, though, Xyrak with Kane, Cecil, and Yang putting great damage out, being zerked, and the most competent white mage in the game is really just putting on a clinic for how to take care of Z, especially in this flag set.
Absolutely, just full speed ahead at this point in time. I'm curious, what weapon has Kane been swinging? Because I don't recall seeing a defense sword, but it looks like a defense sword, and it's doing the damage of a defense sword. It's a defense sword. Okay, that's. I just don't remember where we saw it.
Here comes the second big bang. This one is not nerfed. First one being quite easy to nerf with any old spell. That said, this party is well leveled enough to be able to take a full big bang. Nobody dying to that, and with Rosa pumping out a Cure 4, this is a pretty safe Z fight for Xyrak. Elvin, hot on his heels, making his way down there on his way to Z. Hopefully, we'll get to see a side-by-side Z fight here.
Well, we had that black hole, and so we're at the nuke phase right now. So it's not necessarily counter nukes, but he'll be casting nukes in the meantime. We have to reapply Bacchus wines to our party, and even cast a berserk at this point in time. So a little bit of a setup, but we do have the rocks.
And that is rocks. We will be shortly seeing the end of this fight. Last phase here, less than 10,000 HP. And with this party, it should not take too long at all.
Yep, there's the crash, the boom, the bang, and our winner. And advancing to the bracket stage, Xyrak, 146.06. GG's to Xyrak, and he joins us now in the chat. GG's, sir. How are you feeling?
Thank you very much. Just want to say GG's to Elvin right away. We had 3 very close races over the course of our group play, and he deserves a lot of props for playing very, very well. I feel like I need a shower, sort of. I don't know. That was there was just a lot of gross in that seed. A lot of gross. A lot of things that just felt bad to do.
Yeah, I would really be interested in your take in that overworld. I mean, as that hook became seemingly more and more required, what was your thought process there? What was your plan? And especially taking a couple of sirens on ordeals. That had to be a struggle. What was your thought wrapping up the overworld?
So, I mean, with that boss, I'm like, Yang and Rosa can do this on their own, pretty much, but it's going to be awful. So I did way more looting than I normally would, hoping to pull a Leviathan or a Bahamut from somewhere, and obviously didn't find one. So I did enough experience to get Rosa to blink and just said, I guess we're doing this, acutely aware the entire time that if there was a high-level summon available somewhere that Elvin has, that he's through that fight, no joke, 5 or 6 times faster than I am. So if we're both forced to do what I have to do, I feel pretty good. If he just gets to fly through it, I feel awful. So I have absolutely no idea where I was for the rest of the seed from there.
So, yeah, it was really interesting, and I hope you'll watch it back. Elvensorrow did get through into the underground just a little bit faster than you did. There was no summons, but there was a Stardust Rod in Evelyn Castle in like the one wing that you didn't check.
Oh, straight up the gut, yeah.
Yeah, just so hey, that Stardust. We were like, well, at very least that's a consistent 700 to 900 extra damage every round. So.
Right, and I only had the Rydia casting Jin for 5 or 6 rounds before she ran out of mana, so my DPS definitely would have slowed down compared to his from there. Yeah, makes sense.
So I think another interesting decision you were faced with, getting underground, the starting item being the pan, obviously did those Sheila checks fairly quickly and were presented with a darkness crystal, but you decided to kind of eschew that darkness and stay on Earth and stay in the underground, not even necessarily doing the character check, which I think many a runner may make the decision to do. With 3 objectives on the moon, was there a thought process, or what was the thought process to holding off on that moon trip?
I think from what I've practiced for this, my thinking has come to that the correct number, or the usually correct number of checks you want to leave on the Earth/Underground is maximum 2. So I wanted to clear out enough of everything that's where I was. I also knew I had the Sand Ruby, I had Dwarf Castle available, so even if there was like a Fu or the Cecil on the moon, like the odds were pretty decent I was going to get at least one really big character upgrade. And I had weapons for everybody, so I was like, I don't really even care who it is, just give me one of the big bruisers and we can actually start doing things. And so I just kept doing the Earth and Underground stuff until I was down to the Magus Sisters and the Odin basement, and I think I had everything else taken care of, and that's when I went.
Yeah, I think that ends up being right. You got Magus Sisters and Odin basement, and I did Dwarf Castle fairly early as well, and was rewarded with that Cecil, who you just immediately put to work with that Excalibur. And that we felt was a turning point. You both got into the underworld really about a minute apart, and Elvensorrow went up to the moon, found a Fu, and immediately started checking bosses. Wyvern was kind of nasty. Ogopogo was kind of nasty, so there wasn't anything free kind of up there at the moon. Whereas you got your levels and just zoomed through everything else.
I will admit that there's always luck involved in randos. Pulling a cursed ring out of that pod, I don't know if Elvin got that or not, but pulling a cursed ring, I mean, I might still be trying to get through that Wyvern, honestly, if not for that, so.
I can't imagine it really adds up to much, but are there any kind of routing decisions or gear decisions or looting decisions that you made that you think to yourself, man, that made me feel behind in that moment, or maybe I didn't make the right call? Was there any distinct moments that you felt like you were behind, or did you feel fairly comfortable once you hit Underground? I think everyone probably felt behind in that overworld.
I felt a little bit bad looting as much as I did on the overworld and not really pulling the summon that I was looking for, but I tried not to dwell on it too long. It's kind of results-oriented thinking, right? Try to avoid that. Like I said, I mentioned it here earlier, I had no idea where I was coming out of the underworld because I didn't know what tools Elven had found that I didn't have that would have potentially gotten him through that fight a lot faster than me. So I was like, I could be miles ahead, I could be miles behind, or literally anywhere in between. I really didn't know. On the moon, I debated as soon as I pulled the tower key whether or not I wanted to immediately leave and check it. I decided to hedge my bets by checking the other two spots. I didn't quite have Z-safe levels yet either, which was how I talked myself into it. And then I saw Evil Wall and Dr. Luggage, and I was like, these are slow fights. Why am I doing this? And then when it wound up just being the tower key, I was like, okay, he could be killing Zerumas for all I know right now. I just have to go and hope it's enough. And thankfully it was.
Yeah, abandoning, I think, the Murasame altar, it certainly was kind of a gutsy play, but you went down, did tower, and that led right to the pigtail. Honestly, at that point in time, like, Elvensorrow did it just while you were kind of wrapping up your moon, and we were thinking we had ourselves a race again. I mean, very, very tight between everyone. And then you made the call to go back down, and at that point it was just kind of GG and inevitable at that point.
Yeah, it turned out that way. I obviously can't know that I'm the only guy with a big guy with the big stick either. Like I like it's relatively available. I have to assume my opponent has it. So everybody's Z fight is going to be fast when you have the Cecil swinging, you know, one of the big sticks. So yeah, like I said, that GG. As far as obviously you're always racing blind, but you always get some type of feeling about where you are. But that hook route just completely, there's no way to know where you are after that. So it was nerve-wracking from that fight onward.
Well, nonetheless, despite all the rudeness, you are now through. You are into bracket stages. Congratulations on that. As the runner-up in the Aegis Shield group, you're going to be going up against the winner of Spear, NG Dave, who at this point is undefeated in this tournament. I'm curious to get your thoughts on NG Dave as an opponent and the bracket flag set and the changes that are coming. Do you feel like you have a lot of practice ahead, or what's your thought process going into the next phase of this tournament?
I'll definitely be looking at the bracket flags closer over the next week or so. I mean, I feel fairly confident the stuff that I like to do is, you know, closer to Catalyte usually when I'm doing stuff for fun on my own, so getting the tougher flags doesn't bother me very much. I know I know of NG Dave. I can't say I've seen him race very often, so I'll have to see what I'm up against. But, you know, I'm just a relatively old man who enjoys playing randos and I'm half decent, so my plan is just to come out. I'm going to play my race, and we'll see what happens.
Well, GG's to you, Xyrak, either way. Moving on and advancing to represent the Aegis Shield group. Very well done and fantastic race. Just GG's one last time.
Okay, great. Thanks very much to both of you and to the Restream team. And once again, GG's to Elvin, my opponent. Raced fantastic, as did all of Aegis Shield group. And like you and I will try and do you proud.
Best of luck to you out there in the brackets. I'll be watching. Can't wait to catch your races.
Thanks very much.
Meanwhile, elvensorrow has full committed to Reflect strats. He has a Fu up, and that's it. Just got through a black hole phase, so using the crystal, he's got to be close. He's got a lot of reflected nukes get through. I imagine he's almost through this chunk. Reflect strats using this particular strategy is still a little bit slow, less health to chew through, but yo, I saw the shake. I was like, are we done?
Oh no, alas, not the shape we're looking for. Yeah, had a little bit of a rough fight so far, but sticking in it definitely has gotten through. I know for a while had both Yang and Fu up and getting those reflected nukes off quite a bit. But I don't know if he's counting, but definitely trying to push through and see if he can hit rocks before getting that big bang. But unfortunately, here it comes.
Luckily, with all the reflected nukes, everything is being nerfed right now for the Big Bang, so it's not doing as much damage as if he was just kind of going freely. So lots of, the counter nukes are coming through at this point in time, and I imagine we're almost through, because he's had a lot. There we go. There's the counter nuke with the shake and the crumble. GG's to elvensorrow, finishing in 1 hour, 58 minutes, 27 seconds. Absolutely fantastic work in what was not an easy seed and not necessarily an easy setup. Took the hard road there to get there. And we're joined now by elvensorrow as well. GG's.
Hello. Thank you for the GG's.
GG Elvin. So that was not the most friendly seed there. I think it was a struggle in just about every realm. But you made the decision to go to the moon relatively early. You kind of eschewed the underground checks. What was your thought process of heading up to the moon? Was it originally just a character check that morphed into more, or when you went up there, were you planning on trying to check as many objectives as possible?
It was more that I felt really, really behind, and I thought maybe I could score some nice boss fights, but there weren't any really nice boss fights in this. I took so many wipes, and that really felt bad. But the moon didn't really pay out, and then I started feeling good. I started feeling pretty good, and then I get into Z and I see the dot done from Xyrak. Good game to Xyrak. Let me start there, by the way. Good game to Xyrak, one of the best dudes that I've met in this group, and good game to him.
Yeah, and it's been really fantastic watching kind of everyone in this group go through. It's been an absolute treat. Um, I will say this to you: what would you say if I told you you were actually the first one into the underground?
I would say, darn. Also, there was so many things that I felt went wrong. The antlion was really bad, but I got through it. I don't think I wiped on that one, believe it or not. I think I wiped on everything else a million times. But I still felt behind. I think it was like 55 minutes when I finally got underground. And that's gotta feel bad, right?
Yeah, I mean that overworld was really rough all around. Um, you spent a little more time in Evelyn, took those trap chests there. I think that gave you a little bit of an edge, especially with the cat claw and the stardust rod. Definitely kind of gave you a little bit of an edge getting through that antlion fight and put you underground a little sooner. Um, uh, but I guess also, what were your thoughts on your party? I mean, it's definitely one of the rougher character setups that I've seen for an overworld. And you went and checked Sand Ruby, did not take that cane. I think we were both a little surprised that you saw a melee character sitting there after having a little bit more of a difficult party. What was your thought process on leaving that cane sleeping in Kaipo?
I don't think I had anything really good for Kane, and also I didn't really want to level him up at the time, which it wouldn't take a lot to level him up. But I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think I had much good equipment for him. So I was like, I'm just gonna go with the party I have, And then I was really hoping for a Cecil. Was there a Cecil?
Dwarf Castle.
Oh, Dwarf Castle, no! That's one of the
Yeah.
places. That's one of the places I usually always check.
Yeah, that ended up being kind of the
Oh,
defining point in the race. While
I had like
as
17 Excaliburs or something.
yeah, and we saw you sell all of them, and I could hear your soul crying from all the way over here.
That's where this is. Oh man.
And
Oh,
that
okay.
ultimately, I think
that-
that was the turning point, really.
I don't. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a turning point. I don't know if it make the difference because, like I said, Xyrak is a phenomenal player. Even if I got that, I don't know. But I do remember at the end of the seed, I was hunting around for elixirs or ether 2s. I swear I saw them somewhere, but I couldn't find them, even though I checked like 7 shops. But I'm like, all right, we're just gonna do without that, and that's why I went the not the best way to do 1200 strat, but that's basically what I was doing there.
See, okay, that's what you were shopping around for. We were like, okay, we saw the star veils. We're like, okay, he's definitely doing reflect strats.
Well, the adamant foo with the stardust and elixirs, I can solo Z way faster than I did without that. But without the elixirs, I'm like, okay, well, I can't find those. So I ran out of nukes, and then I was like, well, we're just gonna have to do it the old school way, I guess. But not very, not like the textbook way, but you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. We know exactly what you mean. I think we've all had kind of one of those painful Z experiences at one point or another. Truth be told, even though it was kind of back and forth, and Xyrak had a melee set up going into his party, you had finished all your moon checks and then went back down to the earth. And realistically, it was like, okay, if the pink tail ends up being right at the super cannon location,
Yeah,
you know, you're still in it, and you were still in it right there at the end.
I felt
And
like it at that point too. I did feel like it at that point, but then I did all these checks. But even with my team, even if I had elixirs, I don't think it would have saved me that much time. I think Xyrak still probably would have beat me by maybe a couple minutes.
You know, being up on the moon and being 2 key items away from go mode, and you find one of those key items, did you have a thought to potentially save, set up a save scum and go check that tower key before keeping going with the moon? Especially with maybe a lower leveled party like you had at the time. Was there a thought to that, or did you just want to completely plow through the whole thing, get it done, and maybe hopefully never come back?
Well, I definitely thought about it. Did I not save scum it?
No, I don't believe we saw you check that tower
Yep.
key before you did all of the checks. I think you checked even the Murasame
Yeah.
as well.
Sometimes, well, I probably didn't save scum it because I was probably, like I said, I felt behind the whole time. Once I got underground, I felt behind the whole time. So I probably thought I was doing things in my brain, but not actually doing them. As far as save scumming goes. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, I got outplayed, and I mean, I played my best. I wasn't happy how I played with that because that was just really a rude seed. Those bosses were not very fun. But I played my best and I lost, so it is what it is.
And you played fantastic. I don't think myself as a runner have ever pulled off 1200 seeds or 1200 strats. So that was a brilliant display and a learning opportunity for myself and hopefully a couple of our viewers. 3-2 in the group, making it through the tiebreaker into the playoff. I really should commend you and say that you should be proud of your performance. You put on a great show within our group. And it's been a pleasure commentating on your race tonight.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Like I said, I always play my best. Today it just didn't work out for me. But again, with you, Vitasia, Xyrak, Tall Grant, we had a really good group in here. Oh, did I forget about Night Dude? Oh, that's he's sitting up there on the pedestal at first place. That's why I forgot about him. But yeah, we've had a great group, and actually incredibly strong competition in this group, which I'm sure every other group had. But I couldn't believe it. It's because I didn't know a few of you guys very well, and then it's like, guess what? We're all really good at this, and I really loved the challenge. I love the challenge. I love the friendship. You know, like we had a good time.
Aw, and that's good camaraderie. Big shout out, of course. Aegis Shield group represent, of course. But while we're at that, a quick shout out also to the wider free enterprise community as well. I know this tournament has attracted some new viewers that are out there, so if you haven't already and you want to get in on this love fest that we have going on here in the community, come on over, join us in our Discord. The community is probably one of the most welcoming on the internet, and that's saying something, I think. Feel free to jump in, start asking questions, roll yourself up a seed. Your first few times, if you're just trying to play casually, you don't need to speed run it. Just learn the ropes, but the community's here to help you out every step of the way. So feel free to join us over there on the Discord.
And also take an opportunity to thank the admin and all the behind the scenes crew in the community that put together a wonderful tournament so far. This Adamant Cup has been fantastic. It is my first tournament within the community, and it's been a pleasure not only running it but participating as a restream member. So I as a new person, can't speak highly enough of the community. And I think it also speaks to how fun this game is and how well this randomizer is made. So it's been a pleasure getting to meet so many new friends and enjoy some good times here and contribute to the community as best we can.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said because I'm fairly new, and I was watching a little bit before I started playing, but then I realized the community's really cool, and I joined it. And then the community's actually cooler than you think when you're just watching it. It's cooler to join. Just throwing that out there.
The water's warm. Come on in.
That's what I'm saying. And then, like Beauty and Discovery was saying, everyone in here is always welcome to teach anyone how to play, myself included. If you want to join this community, or if you don't, or if you just want to talk to anyone first, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can get in here, and we got you. We got you. And then we'll see you in the next tournament. Unless you don't want a tourney race, but we'll teach you how to play.
Absolutely. In the meantime, one last shout out, of course, to the folks behind the scenes, by the way. We had Tybalt on the tracking, and of course S-Grunt on the restream, who also rolled this seed. There's no superlatives to add.
Yeah, I got to talk to S-Grunt after this because that was a seed.
With that, we're actually going to send everyone over to Possum Orpheus, who I believe is doing some practice for the. Do we know if he's doing practice for brackets for now? Because I know he's advancing to the brackets as well. So Possum Orpheus is one of our community members, doing some practicing tonight. So make sure not to spoil the ending of this race because he likes to go back and watch them all as well. But thank you from all of us here at Free Enterprise, and have a great rest of your night, everyone. We'll see you at the next race.
All right, thank you again, everyone. Tybalt, S-Grunt, Vitasia, Beauty Discovery, and everyone watching. Thank you again.